Welcome back to the Let's Make Toyota Parts Fit BMW Parts factory. Well, in this week's episode we take care of drive shaft things, or the adaptation of drive shaft things. Here we've got a tri-bolted flange off the back of the 6-speed gearbox, the BMW gearbox. BMW have used this rubber isolator, which registers into the flange like so, and then there would have been another similar device here carrying a yoke to suit a universal off to the two-piece tail shaft in whatever car this came out of. And that's a good idea. These rubber isolators are a vibration dampener and just help refine things and make things smooth. BMWs are considered an exotic, I guess, so they do what they can to make a refined driving experience. We are not necessarily after a refined driving experience. We just want to go fast. We don't want rubber isolators getting in the way of our clutch dumping or any other things that we might be doing. So that's going to go, because we can't make it work anyway. What we need to do is fit this Toyota a universal yoke to our flange. So we'll just get out the welder and call it done, eh? Doesn't matter if it runs true. No, it kind of does. It's actually very important that this does run true. This needs to be 100% concentric as far as this register here goes with the output of the gearbox, or it will run elliptically and it will cause tail shaft vibrations, which are not only extraordinarily uncomfortable but very dangerous, because they will fly out of the car and that causes lots of damage and costs lots of money and could potentially injure somebody, and that's what we do not want. So you'll notice a block of billet aluminium here. This is 6061 aluminium, very strong piece of billet. It's the right size enough. Essentially we're going to lay out, I've loosely marked this out just to get an idea of how we want to go about doing it, but that's sort of what we're going to be looking for there. It seems at a glance that we've got plenty of space. We're well inside the boundary of the material with our tri-bolted flange here, but one of the things that we do have to consider is the fact that the bolt holes in the Toyota flange are going to run outside of what we've got going on our tri-sided flange here. So we have to make sure that when we cut this down to size, that we leave ourselves enough room to get good thread engagement on these bolts here, and you'll see what I mean shortly when I start to mark this out. I've orientated this tri-flange on our piece of stock on a few different orientations just to try and see what the best way we can achieve the most amount of material on a radius around our points. Now to do that, I've taken the liberty of pre-rolling a piece of sheet metal to the desired radius, and we're going to just line it up on our points on our three sides, and we're going to scribe a line on the inside of it, and that's going to give us the same radius on all angles. We can't go much more than that. If you can see down here, we're right at the limit of our piece of material. You can see that that is literally right on the edge there. We can't make this radius any tighter, or we're going to end up with a flat section there. We need to try and do our best to keep everything uniform that we do, because this is going to rotate at tremendous speed and it has to be balanced. You can't run out of balance or we're going to induce vibrations. It's very important that we try and eliminate that as much as possible. I've taken the liberty off camera of making a couple of center pops, custom ones, to suit this application. These bores here are about 12.2 millimeters. I do have some center punches, but they go in even increments. I don't want any slop. I need these centers to be absolutely 100% spot on. So I've made this bore, this diameter here is exactly 12.2, and it registers snug inside our bolt holes on the flange. This is a piece of silver steel which I've brazed into the center of it, and then I've put it back in the lathe, clocked it, and I've actually ground a point on there. It's not been machined. It's spot on. It sits in here, snug as. We're going to use that to center pop our holes. And in the exact same vein, I've made another one out of my favourite brass more stuff that's been under the bench. Actually, this piece has been under my bench for like 20 years now, and I've done the exact same thing. 3/16 hole, piece of hardened material, and I've ground a point in the end. That actually sits perfectly inside the spline, inside the yoke, the BMW yoke, and you'll see in a minute. We're going to drop that down in there and give it a good old pop. That's going to give us dead center, and then this one here is going to give us our bolt spacings. So we'll go ahead and put our bolt spacings in first. That way we can then clamp the yoke down via the flanges, and we can drop this down the center and give our center pop. And we can start scribing a radius where we can mark our Toyota flange and just see how we're going to go for overall material availability to do what we want to do. We've taken our big clamp off. We've uncovered the center of the bore now on our BMW yoke. We've got a U-Butte, high-tech, very expensive, unavailable anywhere else in the world center punch. Man, that fits nice. I love things like that. Okay, we're going to give that a smart whack, and that's going to put a hole bang center in the middle of our job. And that's all we need. We're just going to go through and verify that we've got everything in the right spot. We've got our center of the job, and we've also punched our holes for the 3 bolts in the tri-flange. Now, just to ensure that we've got that right, because it's always good to double check, I've got a set of dividers here, and I'm simply going from the center hole to one of our holes that we've popped for the bolts on the flange, and we're just going to go through and make sure that they all line up, and they do. It's perfect, which is exactly what we want. Alright, we'll set our dividers up at 23 millimeters, and we'll run a radius around our center pop, and then we'll line this up with that, and then we'll be able to see where our bolt holes, or moreover where the edge of the flange material is within our U-Butte scribe marks that we've put on here. Let's see if we're going to be able to make it work. Most scale rulers with their increments have a very small indentation where the increments are, and it makes it very nice to be able to just register the end of your divider right on that line so that you can get it spot on. Die cam is to go, but I don't think I've got any. Cool. Let's see. Let's see my Dual Pro torch. And I'll try and line that up in there. Now, obviously, this is like far from accurate, as we're just trying to get a gauge. However, I'm fairly confident that we're right on the money there. We can see our scribe line here and our scribe line here, and we're right on the edge. This side here's no problem. I mean, it will be for its own reasons, and we'll get to that. But I think I'm pretty happy with the overall shape. And I think I'm going to drill these holes now for the tri-bolt flange. Clamp down. We're on some parallels. I've done that because we're going to be running a drill bit right the way through here, and we don't want to plough into the milling table. So first of all, you'll notice I have a center drill in the chuck, a very, very small one. I prefer to use very fine center drills to find the dead center of my pops. Center drills are good because when you start to drill, they won't wander. I'm going to use a 4mm drill bit after that and send that through the job, and that's going to let the 12mm drill bit go down quite nicely without digging itself to pieces on the center here, where it's not going to cut very well. Bit of that, and we'll keep administering that as we go along. there we've got our 4mm hole all the way through, which went seamlessly. It's very nice. We're going to slow the machine down now for this. We don't want the 12mm drill bit rotating at whatever we had at 1200 RPM or something like that. It's a bit fast. It will probably try and chatter at that speed and we'll end up with a shabby hole, really. We're trying to avoid that. So we're going to slow the machine down and we're going to send our 12mm drill bit down through there, and then I'll show you what we have to do next before we move the table over to the next hole. Slow it down a bit. Okay, that hole is done. Beautiful. This is exactly what we want. This is the surface that's going to interact with the backside of our flange. You'll notice that there's these counterbores in that flange there. This actually doesn't use the bolt holes themselves to maintain concentricity on that isolator. The isolator has steel inserts that actually register into these reliefs here, and we're going to have to perform the same operation in here to do the same thing. So I don't think I'm going to be able to get those pieces out of the isolator, so we'll have to make some new ones. However, I am going to make them to the same specifications. So we're going to find out what this diameter is here of this relief and see if I can find a cutter that is the same. If not, we'll have to make one and counterbore these while we still have the machine concentric with the hole. I just spent a ton of time on the lathe. The rubber isolator that BMW used on the back of their tri-flange had some steel ferrules inserts, I don't know, not dissimilar to those in there. I actually wanted to reuse those ones, but they had flanges on them and all sorts of stuff, so that when they were vulcanized in the rubber that they didn't come adrift. So I've just got some bar stock from under the bench, my favorite place to get materials, and I've just whistled up 3 of these and they register beautifully in here. Here's the other one. So we're going to do the exact same tactic that BMW did. This is an 18mm drill bit. Actually, it's just shy of 18mm, and these are just on 18mm. It's going to be an interference fit, and I'll probably put them in with some Loctite as well. This shank here is 25mm long. I've marked the drill bit at that height. We're going to slow this machine right down now so that we don't get chatter and carry on and destroy the bore that we're trying to create. It needs to be pretty bang on. And once we've done that on this hole, then we can change location and repeat the same procedure. Center drill, pilot drill, 12mm hole for our bolt, 18mm hole for our, geez, I don't even know what you'd call that, insert, I guess. Now at this point, I don't want to go too much further. I'm actually going to take the drill bit out and I'm going to try one of the parts that we've made in the little bit that we've already counterbored, just to make sure that it is going to do what we want it to do, and it is. It's nice and snug, and that's perfect. It's going to allow us to get that in there. Super beautiful. We might put some Loctite or something on there to retain it. May even put these back in the lathe and just put a mild knurl on there in a certain spot, just to create some interference, but we'll see. Anyway, I'm happy with that. That's very good. We'll keep going. We've got our steel inserts installed. When I machined those down, I left a slight taper towards the top so that they'll basically just snug in, and then that last sort of, 3/16 of an inch 5mm for those in the new system. Just put it home in the arbor press and they're not going to go anywhere. Very tightly registered in the aluminium, and you can see that our flange sits over it beautifully. Ideal. It's exactly what we were trying to achieve, and I'm very happy with that. So the next step of the operation is we're going to bolt the flange to the block, and then we're going to start machining the block from this side in the lathe, because we now have something that we can chuck in the lathe. So we'll put this in the 4-jaw chuck. 4 jaws have independent operation on each of their jaws, so that you can wind them in individually with a dial indicator and get this running absolutely dead nuts true. 3-jaw chucks are inherently unreliable for running dead true. I have never found a 3-jaw chuck that just runs perfect. So we'll set it up in a 4-jaw. The other thing we're going to do too is we're going to use these grade 12.9 Allen bolts. The reason for that is I want to counterbore the heads below the surface of the aluminium, simply because a Toyota flange needs to sit flat, and 2 of those bolt holes come very close to these bolt holes. If I've got a hex head bolt sitting out like that, it's going to interfere. If I counterbore for a hex head bolt, I'm going to have a huge counterbore so that I can get a socket in there, and we don't need that either. So we've gone for these. So that's the next step. That's our original bolt from the Toyota flange. Fine M10 thread, 1mm pitch. Found these in that assortment of fasteners that I had over the bench there. This is a 1.25mm pitch thread, and we've got more thread further up the shank than we do on the original one. Which is kind of what I was looking for. I think I would probably still prefer the 1mm thread, although I don't think this is going to present any problems, and it's going to be in a steel insert anyway, and it will go also with some Loctite, and that is also a high tensile fastener. I don't know what actually that come out of, but it's going to be fit for purpose. It'll be good. So we're going to work with that, and we're going to continue now to use the that fastener and some other measurements that we're taking here to determine our overall thickness of our part and how we want it, because that's probably the next step, I think. Working that out, and then put that in the bandsaw, cut off the unnecessary piece, and then face where we've cut it off, and then we can start all the operations on this side of the job. There you go. We've got our part set up in the lathe. I did all this off camera because there's a bit of ginning around. At some point, if you guys want to see how to set up a 4-jaw chuck, drop a comment. I'm sure there'll be plenty of jobs coming up where we'll need to set up something to run dead nuts true, but if you have a look, you can see that the indicator isn't moving. It's running spot on, and that's perfect. You can see our aluminium looking after our surface. We've got enough of our machine surface protruding that we could get the dial indicator in there just without interfering with the jaws of the chuck or the job. Our piece has been torqued down to the yoke, so I'll slow the machine down now, and we'll put a sander in this other side here, and we'll turn our recess for our flange, and we'll see how it all looks. When we come up with these projects, is little ideas, you know, I've got a reasonably good idea in my head of how I want to go about it, and invariably that will change as the job evolves. You know, certain things come to light, or things, you know, don't go quite as you saw them in your head. I mean, you've got to have a loose idea, I suppose, but kind of make it up as you go really, unless you're provided with a drawing, which we're not, and I really don't kind of have the time to draw drawings and make parts. Sometimes I do, but usually I just pull it out of my head. Anyway, follow along, you'll see what else comes out. We'll either make an expensive mess or we'll have a really good part on our hands. You guys can see that the center drill's got a taper on it after the drill part. The reason why we use a center drill is because this has got a very short overhang, and when you send it into a job, if you were to send a normal twist drill in there, it could find itself slightly off center and start trying to drill a hole elliptically or off center. Center drills don't do that, this is why we use them. But they've also got this taper on here, which is 60 degrees included, so 30 degrees each side. And that's good because so does our live center. Most centers for machine tools are 60 degrees as far as tapers for centering goes. Morse tapers are different, NT tapers are different again. That's a whole new complex thing that we're not talking about today. We've got a taper. The center drill put a taper in the end of our job. A live center can go in. So we're going to fit that up now and start turning our land for our yoke. Okay, we've got that supported at both ends now and I feel a lot happier about that. So let's select some tooling now. Probably use something like this so I can clear these fasteners. I'll have to set that up in a different holder, and I'll come back once I've done that because there's some mucking around involved. Just a little tip, what I like to do, sometimes when you're taking really small amounts of material off something, it's very difficult to see how far it is that you're taking it off or how far you've gone in depth. Usually I like to look at the other side of the part that I'm machining and I can follow the cut line down to the bottom of where I need it to be or where I want it to finish, as opposed to trying to get my head actually in the machine to do so. I don't know if that helps any of you or not. Also, it's worth noting that I'm not a machinist. Everything that I do here is literally just from reading machinists' textbooks and just doing it myself. I've been machining now for about 20 years, but I have no formal qualification or education in this topic whatsoever. And I'm sure plenty of you guys out there, turners, machinists, fitters, are going to be looking at me going, what the hell are you doing? Well, I'm doing it the way I worked out how to do it. I think I might just put slight chamfer on this outside here just to A, remove that sharp edge, and B, also just help us line up the taper on the yoke as well. The other issue that I've got here too, and this doesn't actually look that close, but not to forget that we're going to be using a socket headed type fastener, and this has to be counterbored below the surface, otherwise you can already see the witness mark on the aluminium here where I've torqued it down, and it's already going to clip the side of our flange, and I don't want to modify the flange. I've got plenty of material, sorry about the noise, I've got plenty of material here, I can just counterbore it. So that leads us to these marks here. The insert here that we've got to locate on our tri-flange is 25mm deep from the surface, so that's the first line there. I want minimum of 10mm of material on top of that to clamp down onto, and then I want to recess the head of the bolt, which is 12mm, really leaving only about 3mm of material to come off. So I just sort of planned on cutting this down, you know, in the bandsaw, but it's really not required. So I think I'm going to go ahead and counterbore these and get them in place, and then I'm going to put the whole lot back on the yoke, which is still in the lathe, set up, running true, and I will then surface off what we don't need, that couple of millimeters, and finish turning this out for real. As you can see, done 2. Just sort of bring in for the last one. It's not overly exciting, but you might want to see how we're doing it. Let's have a look. Change over to our boring head. And our boring head already set up at the right radius, and that's just going to take that hole out a little bit more, and it's going to flatten the bottom of it out as well. $15mm, perfect, exactly where we wanted it. It's good. Alright, just do the glasses there. Oh man, easy workout. I don't have a countersink bit big enough. So I'm just going to use this 20mm twist drill, nice and slow, and just touch the edges at the top. Beautiful. I like that. It's good. Alright, let's drill and tap these. That's the next thing, eh? Get set up for that. What we should do though is just make sure I actually do have the right tap, didn't pick the wrong one up off the bench, because that would be very troublesome. And it's the right one. I mean, I could have pulled it out and read it, but that's started now, and we don't need to do that in the machine anymore, so we'll move on and do the exact same thing for our other 3 holes, and then we'll pull this out and finish tapping them in the vise when we've got some more room. Any of you guys like dramatically underestimate the time that it takes to do things? Like, even though you've been doing it for 20 years? I do, still. Okay, it's taken me all day, but we've got to a pretty good spot, I think. This is where we're at. We've got our holes drilled and tapped for our Toyota flange, and we've counterbored our holes with our inserts on the other side for our BMW flange. So we can bolt that together now. I was going to machine this back a couple of millimeters, but really for the effort I don't think it's going to make any difference. I mean, well, it won't make any difference, it just means more work really at this stage. Look, if I had to remove 10mm, I'd cut that off and then face it, yeah, it'd be fine, but like, it's just such a tiny amount that I could take off. I just, yeah, it's not worth the hassle. I'm going to leave that now. It's time to go home. That's where we're at. This portion here where I haven't faced is going to be removed anyway, so there's no point adjusting the machine to finish facing that. That's bolted to the yoke, still in the machine. Woody, I just want to apologise in advance for the shit footage that I have really know what you're doing, man. I hope some of that's usable. I feel like a bit of a dickhead, to be honest, but I don't know, maybe we could do something with it. We've got a 1-inch drill bit set up in our tailstock. That's pretty ridiculous, but this is Morse taper 4, and this is an adapter from Morse taper 4 down to Morse taper 2, which is what my tailstock accepts. So that's why we've got such a large overhang. But we did have a bore in the center of our part already, and the drill bit's found the center of the bore. We've slowed the machine down to 125 RPM. Still got a tiny little bit of chatter. I'm going to wrap something around this just to try and take a little bit of that away, and we're using some lubricant also to help eliminate that. But it's going through okay, so we'll keep going and come back when it's done. And this is where we get steel wool. That's where it all starts. We finished with our big 1-inch drill bit. We've got a hole right through there now. And then I've got the boring bar in the machine as well, and I've taken this out to about 32mm, and then I've just put a bit of a lead on here, about 22.5 degrees I think I set it at. I don't know why I did that, I just felt that it needed it. I'll make this stuff up as I go along. I'm going to put the yoke on there now, the Toyota yoke, and I'm just going to put a center drill in the middle of it because I can. It may come in handy at some point down the track. And then I'm going to take the part out and reverse it and do some just clean up put a little taper at the other end of this bore, and then we're going to start finish shaping our radiuses on our corners and finalise bits and pieces. Just put a center pop here, and I'm going to drill a 4mm hole down through this yoke and into our job, and then I'm going to section off a piece of this 4mm bar stock here, and I'm going to Loctite that into the job, and that will just register in this hole, and it will make sure the yoke can only bolt to our part in that direction only. Now, while I'm confident and I have checked that at any offer up of this yoke to the part in any order, like it still spins concentric, I know that I've just finished machining it like this, set up like this, and so I want to pin it so that it goes back together only this way and eliminates any chance of any run out whatsoever. Not that I think that it would make any difference, because at the end of the day this thing had a rubber isolator on it anyway, and there's plenty of opportunity for that to run out of concentricity, but yeah, I just like to do things in a certain fashion to ensure that there's just not going to be any problems. Just got our part back in the milling machine, and I've got a radius tool just jigged up here. You saw us scribe a line around our bolt holes, so we're just matching that outside of that line now, on that scribe point, and we're literally using the milling machine to scribe between those 2 points and give us our line that we will work towards moving that material, and it'll be the same all the way around then between all of these points. I used one of the pieces that I cut off this piece here and machined it into a V. It's not 45, I didn't really care, I just wanted a V so that I could chamfer the back edge. This is where the BMW yoke fits up, and I just thought we could profile that a bit better. It was fairly unnecessary, but I like it, looks good. So we're going to really, the part's complete. It is just now time for a final cleanup. So we'll put this back in the vise. Now we've got 2 files here. What I'm using on this is a long angle lathe file. Fine, you can see the difference in the angle between these two. Now this isn't fine, this is the second cut. but nonetheless that's a hand file and that's a lathe file. This is less likely to get choked up than this kind of angle with the speeds that you would be using in a lathe if you were filing or refining a surface in the lathe. This grade of aluminium is very good and not very likely to gall up. Some lower grades of aluminium and cast aluminium are certainly very soft and will like to gall up in a file. A handy trick for trying to mitigate that is just a little bit of cutting. You can see there's some impregnation of brass and some aluminium. I've got a few of these. This side's nice. A little bit of CRC 556 or similar. I prefer that, but yeah, and that will just help the debris not stick in the file. It just helps it, you know, slide off. It doesn't let the filings fall away as easy. You have to clean up a bit more, but it will prevent galling up for the most part. There's no real science behind this. It really just is a matter of just nice and slow and just work your way across and just basically distress the part. I've run this in all three orientations on the yoke and it's concentric in every way. However, I machined it bolted up in one particular orientation and that's how I want it to stay. So I'm going to put a pin in it to ensure that that's the way it goes back together every single time, so that there's zero chance that this can run out of concentricity and create problems. Now, with that being said, what was on the back of the gearbox before was just this huge, like 45 odd mil thick rubber isolator with the tri-bolt pattern for the flange out of the gearbox, and then another tri-bolt pattern off to the yoke and out to the tail shaft. So being the fact that that was just one huge big piece of rubber, there's no way it could have run perfectly true all the time anyway, especially under torque. But that doesn't matter to me. Perfection is almost good enough. So we will try, as we always do, to get this like as good as we possibly can. So that scribe line there is our depth of the insert into our piece. So we'll knurl up to that line, and our overall, you can see the corresponding hole in the yoke there. It fits together so nicely. And we'll just repeat the same procedure. And that scribe line represents our overall height. Well, we don't need to come that high, we might finish up a little bit shorter, but we may not. I'm not overly worried about what this looks like. I'm merely just trying to upset the surface. By creating these indentations with the knurling tool, I'm actually making the area between the indentations more proud. That material has to go somewhere, and the idea behind this is that while this is a slip fit into the hole that's been bored into our part, by knurling this and mildly increasing the diameter of the part as a result, there'll be a slight interference fit, and it's going to create a mechanical advantage over keeping this in our part, as well as also we're going to use some Loctite on there as well. I'm going to call that home. Dude. Look at it. Almost as if we knew what we were doing. Ideal. Not too much overhang from our fasteners. The nylock is definitely engaged with the thread. That looks really nice. Our dowel is flush with the surface. Not that that's really critical, but it's just nice when see things like that. Makes me happy. We're done. We're finished our part. It's all bolted up. And I'm really happy with it. It's come up really good. There's absolutely no doubt that I get really carried away with this stuff. This doesn't need to look like this. No one's ever going to see this unless it's up on a hoist, and probably, truth be known, it'll be coated in grease by the time somebody actually gets to appreciate it anyway. But I'm of the opinion that if you're going to do something, you do it with everything that you've got. Otherwise, don't bother, because I don't know why. That's just the way it is for me. So I put a good amount of effort into making what I think has come out to be a really nice part that's going to be, yeah, strong, good service life, look good, and I enjoy making it. It's a hoot for me. I like this sort of thing. A lathe is definitely required for making parts like this, where you've got to, well, essentially things that turn, you know, onto other things that turn. Concentricity is of utmost importance, especially when things rotate fast like this. So yes, you need a lathe, but the point I'm making here is don't be afraid to get out your hacksaw and your files and your dung and drill press and see what you can make with that stuff, because you'll be surprised at what you can do with simple hand tools. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't have a machine that can get that radius there. I can't remember what it is, but it's pretty decent. It's like, I don't know, 450 millimeters or something. I've got nothing that'll swing that. So that's all been done by hand. And arguably, a file, you know, can do just as good a job as a machine if you're paying attention. And you know, it's slower, of course, but yeah, don't be afraid to get your tools out and give stuff a go, because it's very satisfying. And even if it doesn't work, you've learnt how not to do it, and probably many other things within that as well. But yeah, get your gear out, make parts, feel proud, go fast. See you back at the skid factory when we put this on our Supra, hey?